On April 4th, 1968, the tragic assassination of MLK Jr. prompted Jane Elliott, an Iowa school teacher, to conduct an experiment on racial prejudice. Jane Elliott's Brown Eyes Blue Eyes experiment immediately captured national attention and showed how easily injustice and discrimination can be created. Racism has always been a problem in America. Discrimination and prejudice towards minorities was still a common practice in the 1900s. The civil rights movement was at its climax in the 1960s. Many people of all backgrounds protested and marched to end discriminatory practices, which often ended with police brutality. Discrimination toward minorities was accepted and taught to all young white children. Caucasian children were told that they were better, smarter, and well-behaved. African American children were dismissed as dumb and ill-mannered. Jane Elliott wanted to teach her small-town white students that all races were equal. Just a month before Jane Elliott's experiment, her third-grade students had named MLK Jr. Man of the Month. He was chosen for his bravery, his contributions in the civil rights movement, and his never-ending ways of nonviolence. MLK Jr.'s death prompted Jane Elliott to try a daring experiment and teach her kids about the dangers of racism. The day after MLK Jr. was assassinated, Jane Elliott asked her class if they knew what it felt like to be judged based on their skin color. Her students smiled and nodded. She asked them if they would want to be judged by their eyes just for that week. The children responded with enthusiastic yeses. Elliott then started explaining that the blue-eyed kids were smarter than brown-eyed children. They got to sit with the teacher while the brown-eyed kids had to sit at the tables in the back. The blue-eyed children got to go to the lunch lines first, while the brown-eyed children had to wait. She started the experiment by giving the brown-eyed children blue collars to wear so that they could be easily distinguished from the blue-eyed children. Immediately, the moods of the children changed. What the children thought would be a fun exercise began to be a toxic environment. The blue-eyed children, who were given a privileged position, mocked the brown-eyed children, and even started suggesting punishments for the, quote, dumber kids.
I don't see the yardstick, do you?
It's probably over there. Hey, Miss Knight, you better keep that on your desk so if the brown-eyed people get out of hand.
Oh, you think if the brown-eyed people get out of hand, that would be the thing to use?
By the first day at recess, two boys got into a fight. The blue-eyed children were chanting brown eyes and pointing fingers. Once they were inside, Elliott asked them about their tussle.
What's wrong with being called brown-eyed?
It means that we're stupider. No, not that. But...
When asked why the blue-eyed children mocked his friend, he replied by shrugging and in a meek voice said, "To be mean." Elliott was shocked by her results so early in her experiment. She hadn't realized how much one day of discrimination could impact the feelings of an entire class.
I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into nasty, vicious, discriminating little third graders in a space of 15 minutes.
The next day, Elliott decided to change which students received privileges. She said she lied about the blue-eyed children and that it was the brown-eyed students who were actually smarter. She was surprised to see that the brown-eyed students, who were sluggish and unfocused just the day before, transformed into being faster, happier, and more attentive students just by reinforcing them as a privileged group. A controversial aspect of her experiment is her use of psychological manipulation. For example, she used positive reinforcement with the, quote, smarter children, while she singles out misbehaving students and makes them feel dumber than their peers.
That's better. Now, do you know how to make a W? Okay, write the contraction for we are. Now that's beautiful writing. Is that better?
Yes.
Brown-eyed people learn fast, don't they?
Yeah.
Boy, do brown-eyed people learn fast. Very good.
She created a discriminatory environment in which she singled out a student. She used the other kids to reinforce beliefs about others, therefore making the singled out student feel alone in the classroom.
You blue-eyed people are not to play with the brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. Do blue-eyed people know how to sit in a chair? Very sad. Very, very sad.
When the brown-eyed children believed that they were smarter, they acted differently. They were more attentive and focused in all of their studies, while the blue-eyed children started falling behind even though they had excelled the day before.
I use Orton Gillingham phonics. We use the card pack. And the children, the brown-eyed children, were in the low class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people.
When the children wore the collars, showing that they were the inferior eye color, their performance in academics decreased, and so did their moods. When the day was over, Jane Elliott asked the class what it felt like to wear the collars. The class replied by saying how awful it was.
And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything.
It seemed like Mrs. Elliott was taking our best friends away from us.
Elliott taught them a valuable lesson in the tragedy of racism and how you should never discriminate against anyone because of the color of their skin. This was a lesson that many from the class took with them into adulthood. Her experiment caught the attention of places nationwide. She was asked to perform her experiment 2 more times in different classes, although she was heavily criticized for her use of manipulation of children and was often accused of being an egomaniac by the press. While there was a lot of backlash, there was also positive comments from the public. All of her students that had participated in the experiment said that they were thankful for Miss Elliott and were glad to be a part of her experiment.
I felt demoralized, humiliated.
Is the learning worth the agony?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
To this day, she still offers trainings in equity development with adults instead of children. Her belief that there is only one race, the human race, has touched the lives of many. She started her experiment with a focus on racial equality, but has also made many contributions to women's rights over the last few decades. Jane Elliott was a pioneer who saw the importance of discussing the negative impact of discrimination to young white children in a time when this was not a common practice. You are not born racist. You are born into a racist society, and like everything else, if you can learn it, you can unlearn it. But some people choose not to unlearn it because they're afraid they'll lose power if they share with other people. We are afraid of sharing power. That's what it's all about.